We're going to go back into Acts 9 as you get your seat or warm up your coffee or whatever you need to do. And we're going to look at the man whom, when Luther discusses Ananias in a way I find very helpful, if you read something in Luther's works that is called a commentary, it's not really what's usually called a commentary today, which is kind of a technical book full of technical details. Very often it was a recorded sermon, which is what the church fathers quote commentaries on scripture all are. Or it is a little less frequently something like a classroom lecture, but with the flow that you need in a lecture, not stopping to note all the technical details. And one of the things that Luther says in what is a mostly complete commentary on Acts is that Ananias is proof that everyone needs a pastor, okay? Because Ananias is a guy who otherwise is unremarkable and will disappear after this. But for this time and for this purpose, he matters a lot. The thing that I want to particularly pay attention to is the information Ananias is given that Paul will not possess about his own ministry. So we talked yesterday about the notion of actual divine control of the progress of the gospel. And part of that is God's knowledge of what must happen with a person that in certainly my own case was not shared with me beforehand. And in Paul's case, will be known to Ananias, but not necessarily known to Paul. So we want to look for that. I'm going to read verses 10 through 19 here in Acts 9 to get us started this afternoon. Now, there was a disciple at Damascus named Ananias. The Lord said to him in a vision, Ananias, and he said, Here I am, Lord. And the Lord said to him, Rise and go to the street called Straight, and at the house of Judas, look for a man of Tarsus named Saul, for behold, he is praying. And he has seen in a vision a man named Ananias come in and lay his hands on him so that he might regain his sight. But Ananias answered, Lord, I have heard from many about this man, how much evil he has done to your saints at Jerusalem. And here he has authority from the chief priests to bind all who call on your name. But the Lord said to him, Go, for he is a chosen instrument of mine to carry my name before the Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel. For I will show him how much he must suffer for the sake of my name. So Ananias departed and entered the house, and laying his hands on him, he said, Brother Saul, the Lord Jesus, who appeared to you on the road by which you came, has sent me, so that you may regain your sight and be filled with the Holy Spirit. And immediately something like scales fell from his eyes, and he regained his sight. Then he rose and was baptized, and taking food, he was strengthened. Okay, take it just piece by piece and pay pretty minute attention to what's going on here. We don't have a record of anyone in Damascus before we just heard recently about Saul's desire to go there to persecute Christians. So things are scattering, or Christians or the gospel are spreading beyond anyone's particular plan. It's also in a place, Syria, that was not specifically named, unlike Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria. Okay, so that's already there. The gospel is already present. In addition, there is this man Ananias we've never seen before. He's got a pretty nice Greek-ish Jewish name. His name is probably Hananiah or something like that in Aramaic, but you can tell that, at least for our purposes, that's been turned into this kind of fake Greek name. Like in previous generations, there were plenty of guys in Missouri Synod congregations named things like I don't know, Gunther or something, in a crossover generation where maybe the parents grew up speaking German. This guy only ever spoke English, but he still got a German name. That's kind of Ananias. It's not really a normal Greek name, but it's put in a Greek form and it's pronounced like it's Greek. Another thing to note is there are a bunch of guys named Judas. Why might this be? Kind of like with Saul, that's your famous ancestor. That's one of your most famous ones. And that's the Greek form of the name Judah. And Saul is with him, and it's in a street called Straight because ancient streets are usually not. Okay. So it's notable when they are. Roman roads are straight, streets in a city, not so much. Okay. So all of this is going to be fairly easy to find. He's got his directions. Notice in 13 that with the proclamation of the gospel has also come knowledge of the persecution of the gospel. Okay. So we said yesterday that persecution and proclamation go together. And that's true both in what happens in the church or through the church, but it's also true in the church's awareness that with the knowledge of the spread of the gospel goes the awareness of the persecution or opposition to the gospel. Okay. I think that's a difficult concept for us because we don't associate generally in the United States persecution or opposition with the gospel, but whether it's private or public, there's going to be resistance from sinners. Okay. So he knows about that. He knows about Saul and what he has done. All right. He also knows about Saul's personal religious authority, verse 14. And here he has authority from the chief priests. Notice how the Christians are described. They've been described already as holy ones, saints. And in 14, they are described as all who call on your name. Now, that, in addition to this, with one accord or of one heart and soul, all who call on your name, that is pretty much a theme verse for Acts, okay, that comes up over and over again. All who call on the name of the Lord shall be saved. Okay. That's going to come up many times over throughout the book of Acts. The first place that I can find, just in a quick search, is 2:21. This is a quote from Joel 2. So this would be Joel 2:32. And it shall come to pass that everyone who calls upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. So notice how Ananias uses all who call upon the name of the Lord, or another word you could use that we do use in church, instead of saying call upon, is the word invoke. We start with an invocation. We invoke God's name. That is something only the Christians, the saints, do. Okay. So Ananias is using that kind of theme verse almost from Joel 2 as a way to describe what the church is, who the church is. Okay. Anything else so far before we talk about Saul's destiny? Sorry. I should stay. It's kind of like Abraham. It's easy to get tripped up in the timeline. Yeah. Right.
Don't you really feel sorry for Ananias? I mean, I always do, because he's saying, you're sending me to who? Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Are you sure? And then the next word is shut up and go.
Yeah. Credit to Ananias is that there are plenty of people who don't do that. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've been talking about the apostles. Not a lot of apostles run around the ends of the earth right now, at least. And Ananias' objection is somewhat like Mary's objection. Like, how can this be? Not like you can't do this. I just want to understand how this is even going to happen because I'm a virgin. I want to understand how this is even going to happen because I thought this guy was killing all of us, and now I'm supposed to go.
I wish it was. Are you sure?
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's a sincere question. Go ahead.
Maybe how exactly was Saul killing him? Like, what was that happening?
I have never thought about it. You could rule out beheading.
Yeah.
I would guess stoning.
Like they would bring them to Jerusalem and then stone them.
Yeah, I mean that would be the right way to do it, and I think he's trying to do it the right way because he's there to arrest people, and then they're going to be put in custody in Jerusalem, and then they can have a blasphemy trial, just like Jesus, and then possibly be executed, directly.
So they're able just to go to places outside Jerusalem, in prison.
That's the head shift. Is if I can add, do you have American citizenship? Okay. So if she doesn't have American citizenship, that's the same concept as theoretically the Brazilian government has jurisdiction over her. They don't, but she could be in America or Thailand and have Brazilian citizen, and the government of Brazil has a claim on her. It also has a duty to protect her, but it has a claim on her that since she's an American citizen, it doesn't. But for them, how do I get citizenship, as it were? I'm born that way. The possibility of conversion is a total change of everything else about my life. And that's why these people don't want to become Jewish, even if they believe the scriptures, because you're kind of cutting yourself off from your family because you were born into a certain, let's say, nation.
But they're able to just travel to wherever.
Anywhere. When Jesus says you cross seas to make one proselyte, right? Well, why am I crossing seas to make proselytes? Because there are people there in contact with Jews, right?
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah, go ahead.
the United States has this with U.S. citizens. They can go anywhere in the world to get a U.S. citizen, like for
Yes,
monitoring,
that's right.
financial, for
Correct.
terrorism.
Yeah.
I mean, you can drone
Taxes.
especially taxes.
Us.
Yeah.
Not everybody does that. We do that
Yeah.
to our people. Yeah.
We had just recently, we had the controversy of a drone killed a U.S. citizen. He was a U.S. citizen, but a citizen of Yemen, I think.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because he was involved. So,
Right.
yeah. So you have the concept. Now, when you have people with more than one citizen, then it gets
That's tricky. Yeah.
because then the countries can say, hey, no, because this person, and I think Paul uses that
Yes,
a lot.
he does.
Say, I'm Jewish, but I'm Roman.
Yes. So your nation is basically decides who has religious authority over you. And to exercise that authority, they can go anywhere you are.
Which is interesting within empire that's how they actually operate.
Honestly, it's a lot easier if you just think about this in terms of, it's after lunch, so I'm trying to keep you awake. So I'm just going to do this for 5 minutes. The Roman Empire has very few Romans in it. There just aren't that many actual Romans, right? And a lot of people who think of themselves as Italian were brought to Italy at this time to work on farms, especially in southern Italy, from the Middle East, because there were not enough people to work on these giant, essentially plantations or estates that they had. Not a lot of Romans running around. How do I govern something if I have, let's say, proportionally 5 people per 10,000 in my empire? I let all those other people figure out their own stuff until I absolutely have to deal with it. And especially for when you think about what we call religion, a lot of what religion is governing people's everyday conduct and their family life. So let them do that. If in their religion it's okay to be polygamous, go for it. In their religion, it's not okay to get divorced without a certificate from the rabbi, do that. Doesn't matter. You go deal with that. Okay. Don't create giant unrest and send us your tribute. That's the idea. So that's how they run it. And so what really matters in life is what nation you were born into. You're Greek or Jewish or whatever. And that's going to control the value. You might never have any contact with a Roman. You might never even see a Roman. And you're not a citizen, so Rome doesn't really owe you anything, really, except to prevent like total chaos. And that's enough. So that's how that's why right? If a Jew moves to Spain or Egypt or Rome, his own people are still in charge of running most of the questions a normal person's going to have in life, like whom am I allowed to marry, stuff like that. The Romans will enforce legal and financial things. So if a Jew owes a debt to another Jew, maybe his own people can sort it out. Maybe not. He might use a Roman court. If a Jew owes a debt to a Roman, the Romans will sort it out. So the Roman government is kind of like, how the states in the United States do all of this stuff. So the federal government isn't personally picking math textbooks right now. I mean, who knows what'll be true in 10 days, right? So, right. Who knows what will be going on, but that's a rough equivalent. Yeah. It's the best way to govern all of these different people, and you just don't have enough Romans to do it. So, yep. Okay. Anything else so far on Ananias you want to talk about? Yeah, that's right.
Maybe it's a minor point, but when Acts chapter 9,
Yeah.
the feast day of January 25th, conversion of St. Paul.
Yeah.
And I always construe, and I have growing up, the conversion is on the road to Damascus.
Yeah.
But it really isn't. Until I read Luther's sermon,
Yeah. Right.
He was converted and he was baptized. What happened on the road to Damascus, Paul's own recounting, he used the word apocalypse. Christ was revealed.
Yeah, it's a revelation of Jesus.
So it really should be in some ways the apocalypse to
Yeah.
St. Paul and his conversion.
Yeah, the revelation to St. Paul. And I think that the January date there is just a matter of convenience connected to the Feast of Peter and Paul. I don't think it has any historical. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's look at his destiny, what it will be. The knowledge will not be given to Paul directly, but in verse 15, given to Ananias, the Lord said to him, "Go, for he is a chosen instrument of mine to carry my name before the Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel. For I will show him how much he must suffer for the sake of my name." Actually, I have the Greek here. Skevos, I think it is. Chosen vessel. Yeah. So you could also translate chosen vessel as elect, or I'm sorry, chosen instrument as elect vessel, which I hope gives you a sense of the use of the word election in Romans 9, that it's also called, it's tied into Paul's calling. But the idea of being a vessel is one Paul's going to use. He uses it for humans generally, right? So you got vessels of honor and vessels of dishonor. He also uses it to describe the nature of his life. We said earlier today, his thinking about the sacrifices that he makes in this service is described in terms of a drink offering poured out from a vessel. Okay. The other thing about a vessel is, he's going to say in 2 Corinthians, we have this treasure of the knowledge of Christ in jars of clay. Okay. So this is an idea he runs with. There's a lot about this that you will pick up in other places in Paul if you have eyes to see and remember the little details. Details that are shown him in the course of time. So this is really kind of an interesting thing, is that Ananias gets everything up front. Like, it's kind of like a movie trailer where they are really giving away most of the plot of the movie in the trailer, right? But it's not giving too much away because Ananias doesn't have to live this life. Okay. Saul will have to live this life, and he doesn't get to watch the trailer. Okay. The life that he lives, the sequence is an interesting one because it's not geographic, it's demographic, right? So geography, we've been focused on in Acts, and that really is the predominant idea. But for Saul, it's going to start with the guy who is trying to kill people for being insufficiently Jewish, will be sent to the Gentiles. Okay. He will also face great potential threat to his life because he will also be put before kings. And this is, I think, mostly forgotten. He's also sent to the children of Israel, just not with the same focus, let's say, that Peter is sent to the children of Israel. So people kind of forget that Peter baptizes Cornelius, and they tend to forget that Paul also evangelizes the Jews. All right. So it seems that they have different areas of focus, even though everybody's available, to, you play right field and I play second base, but we all bat when it's our turn. Okay. So they have general just responsibilities. I don't think the order is irrelevant. That is going to be kind of the major group, some guys he will encounter, and then people who are going to frustrate the living daylights out of him, and that's his own people. Okay, and you hear that frustration in the middle of the letter to the Romans, especially. Those are going to be the groups. Along with this, as that plays out, I will show him how much he must suffer for the sake of my name. Ananias is told it, Saul will be shown it. So what he is, because of God's calling, only plays out over time. That he is called is known definitely now. He is my elect vessel now. What that is, what the reality of these things will be, that plays out over time. And there's kind of no way around that, right? He can't like front load the suffering or something. Get it out of the way, right? Okay. All right. Anything about yeah, go ahead, Pesper.
It's just the name is there again. It's my name. That's the name of the word is really important, and just
Yep.
the numbers with the benediction. And that's how I place my name. It's,
Yes.
I don't think we have. I know I have trouble understanding the concept of how important the name is, or what this means.
Yeah.
This, because our names are not labels. Our names are just labels, I should say. They're not. They don't have no meaning. They, do you know what I mean?
I do, yeah. I mean, I think Christopher is a good name for a pastor.
Great name.
Yeah, right.
Christ bearer.
About names in general, you want to think about a name as the equivalence we made yesterday, that you, by what power or by what name do you do these things? So if you think about God's name as having a power in it, that's how Luther talks about it in the Large Catechism. That's why you teach the children to use Jesus's name when they pray, is that the name has power to withstand evil and to protect the good and to protect believers. So a name is not just a means of identification. I think we tend to think of names not exactly, but close to a social security number. In itself, it's meaningless. It's only meaningful as a piece of information that unlocks other pieces of information. Okay. And that is partly because we don't have these names that mean like, my God is help or whatever, like they have in the Old Testament, right? Which is what the Puritans were trying to translate into English. It's also because we don't think of names in this. The names are more like what the girl that I told you about this morning was trying to do by using my full name and trying to give me strange things, right? Is that the way that the demons believe that they will be able to control Jesus when they say, we know who you are, Jesus, Son of the Most High, using his name. Because the knowledge of the name, it's not just like it's creepy, like I've never met you before, but you know my name. It's that I know what your name is, so I have a certain power over you. Names and powers go together. And I think we can recover that even if we don't have names that mean something in and of themselves special, right? I mean, yeah.
We get titles of authority. The mayor
Yeah.
said to do this.
Yeah.
The president.
Yes. And that idea is closer to what we're saying when we say that the name of Jesus has power.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Also about names is not my name doesn't mean because multitude of a nation or whatever, but each of our names has a history of how your parents named you,
Yeah.
who they were thinking of, what relatives, etc. And the importance of nicknames.
So my middle name is Clinton, which I was not named for the governor of Arkansas at the time. My mother had never been to Arkansas, but I was born while my dad was on field exercises at Fort A.P. Hill. And he did not want my name to be Clinton, my middle name to be Clinton, but my mother wanted to name me after my dad, and he wasn't there. They got him in the middle of the night and said, "You have a son, go home." But he wasn't there when the birth certificate was signed, so that's my middle name. So yeah, that's an example where the name is very significant. And Thomas, my third son, has the middle name Clinton. So the name is now like living generations beyond its expiration date, according to my dad. But my dad picked my name when he was 12. When I have a son, his name will be Adam. So yeah, that's right. I don't think our names are as far from the Bible's. I just don't think we think about it much. And that's on us, because we don't realize what amazing things are occurring when we're using the name of Jesus every day. Yeah. Kyle, did you ever get to?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of it. Trying to compare with the naming we get from Adam having authority to name all the creatures of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't have the authority to give himself the name. But he does have, he gives the key name to Eve, if I'm correct, if I know that correct.
Hava, yeah.
Yeah. So then sort of goes with that power of almost that ownership. Like Mary doesn't name Jesus, she's told what his name will be. Or Joseph is told what his name will be.
Because he has God for his father. The father is the one who names.
Yeah.
That's why they look at Zechariah, who can't talk, because they're like, "Are you okay with this?" Because unlike my middle name, like it's dad's pick. Now I don't know what my dad wanted my middle name to be, but it's the dad's. Like you're saying, it is the dad's prerogative. That's why Jesus is given a name, because he does not have an earthly father. His father names him. Yeah. All right. We can think about that for a little bit. Let's talk about what happens after that. Immediately, something like scales fell from Paul's eyes, and he regained his sight. Then he rose and was baptized, and taking food, he was strengthened. Okay. He has had hands laid on him. That was verse 17. So he's not just healed, he's also filled with the Holy Spirit. So we know more is now intended. He has been sent forth. This explains what happens next. And I'm just going to take these paragraph by paragraph the way the ESV lays it out. I think it's helpful. There's a lot of information compressed. For some days he was with the disciples at Damascus, and immediately he proclaimed Jesus in the synagogue, saying, "He is the Son of God." And all who heard him were amazed and said, "Is not this the man who made havoc in Jerusalem of those who called upon this name?" There's that phrase again from Joel 2. "And has he not come here for this purpose, to bring them bound before the chief priests?" Notice they usually use it in the plural, even though technically chief, I guess, is more vague. Don't worry about it. But they're not just talking about Caiaphas, which is interesting. But Saul increased all the more in strength and confounded the Jews who lived in Damascus by proving that Jesus was the Christ. So he's got both the communication of the gospel as well as the defense of the faith against opposition happening at the same time in the same place, right? He's proclaiming Jesus is the Son of God. He's also saying, no, he's really the Christ. You're wrong about how you understand the scriptures, okay? Now, where are the Gentiles? I thought it said Gentiles, kings, but notice he didn't get that, right? So he begins to immediately do what is really the most natural thing. Paul kind of speed runs through what the entire church was doing for the first several chapters of Acts by saying, okay, I understand scriptures. I'm going to go tell the other Jews, right? And that's fine. I want you to notice something, though. He's never going to quite abandon this strategy entirely. Even when later on in Acts, you'll see him get so frustrated with his fellow Jews that he says, I'm done, tired of this. This is enough. Then he's back. He just can't stay away. He's back in the synagogues later on, okay? Because this is an encounter. And for us, this is, I mean, you can think about how this applies, what kind of groups you're in contact with, what kind of people you meet. These are people who are just categorically interested in the Bible, whatever that is like, okay? They want to know what the Bible says. They are really sort of ready to discuss that as he goes into the synagogues, okay? So they're never going to get away from the synagogue entirely, even if there may be great frustration. There's some group of disciples at Damascus, but he's also going into the synagogues. Now, it's interesting that even there, the quote there in verse 21, those two quotes, two sentences within the block there, is not this the man who made havoc in Jerusalem of those who called upon this name? Those are not Christians saying that. Those are just Jews generally, and they're saying, I thought he was on our team. Right? So this doesn't really make sense. Sometimes I have heard, I don't know, maybe I've even said this, who knows? I hope I did. That Paul is chosen as one untimely born, in the delicate phrase of the King James, that Paul is chosen basically because he's so good. And I understand why people say that, because he is highly trained in the scriptures. Sure. But I can think of people who would be less of an immediate difficulty than a guy who is already famous as a persecutor of the gospel, right? Like, probably there's somebody, Ananias. What about Ananias? He seems like a nice guy. Okay. So this is really an immediate difficulty. And when you're talking about defense of the faith, and this is where I don't want to think about defense of the faith as just intellectual challenges. Those are there. Paul's answering those. But there's also defense of the faith in the credibility of the messenger, or the difficulty of listening to the messenger. Or I thought that, like, okay, I mean, just imagine some guy is a convicted murderer in a state where you probably have a really good chance of parole, even with a conviction for second or third degree murder. And he becomes converted and he wants to go to seminary now that he's out of prison. Okay, I mean, I guess I could see it. He acted ignorantly in unbelief. I mean, there's a nice parallel here with Paul, but you can see how that would be kind of difficult. Hey, Pastor, what were you doing between the ages of like 27 and 44? Where were you? Well, I was upstate. I mean, it's awkward. At the very least, it's awkward. It's kind of easier if you're like, well, I was serving another parish and now I'm here. Like, okay, that's a nice thing that you're a pastor. You haven't been in prison for killing people, right? And so there are more likely people one can imagine. Maybe not in terms of, I don't know, Bible talent or something. But they already know about him. And has he not come here for not only was he on our team, I thought he was in town to do this. When it says in 22, then that Saul increased all the more in strength, I don't think that has to do with his, physiological functioning. I mean, maybe he's getting leaner and meaner and buffer, but I think it has to do with his spiritual growth, much like the growth of Jesus in the Gospel of Luke. And he increased in favor and in stature with God and with men, right? And what he does then is he lays to rest the Jews who lived in Damascus by proving that Jesus was the Christ. Anything so far before he has to run. Okay. So his ministry begins in Damascus, which is.
So it's not a training montage where he's like lifting weights and
I would
doing
do
all that.
I would do the training montage, but he wouldn't be lifting the weights.
Okay.
Yep. Because one of the difficult, this is just a cultural difficulty. You can overcome those, but it does exist. Paul is going to insist that he is not quote eloquent, and that doesn't make a lot of sense unless you understand that he has had, because he is a devout Jew, had to forego a Greek education where you actually would be lifting weights and you would be as eloquent as somebody like Apollos, but you can't do that because you have to do that in the nude. So no Jew's going to do that. And you can tell that he's like awkward with sports because he does mixed sports metaphors very often. Like he'll do like boxing, and then right next to it he'll do running instead of just doing one, which is generally what you do when you know what you're talking about. You just do one, and then later on maybe you do a different. So in Pittsburgh, everyone is obsessed with all three of our major sports teams. I mean, we're coming up on the season where the guys wear long sleeve. They're nice polos. They're kind of like golf polos, long sleeve Steelers polos to church because it's game day, and kickoff is at 1. So they get out of church in time. They're fine, but like they're obsessed, right? So if I'm doing, sports illustrations are easy and great and everybody understands them in Pittsburgh anyway. Okay. If I'm going to do an illustration, I'm just doing Steelers. I'm not going to say, and it's like what Jack Lambert said about quarterbacks, they should all wear dresses. Which is a lot like how terrible the Pirates are. I don't do that. Paul's mixing metaphors, I think partly because Greek culture is, he's like in it, but not of it. So it's right next door, but it's not him. Yeah. It's an interesting one, but this is a training montage of a kind. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Yeah. That's Burger. Go ahead.
Some of this is like what we've all experienced, past or lays. The more you're in the scripture, you're lighting up. So he's seeing the connection between all this Old Testament stuff that he knows backward and forward, and all of a sudden, that verse that you've read 200 times, you go, how could I not know what that was about?
Yeah, that's right.
But it doesn't. It's not there until it is there.
That's right. Yeah, that's good. Go ahead.
He seems very blunt at this time, then, because right after this, they're trying to kill him. But his job there was to capture the kingdom. So obviously, these people, the Jews there, were like, oh, I don't really know who they are. I don't know how much I want to get involved in this. To now, like, yeah, let's like lock everything down and kill this guy. So, like, this is, you have to really be poking them hard to get that response.
Yeah. So he doesn't, convert and then say, I understand how they feel. And he really does mean, I would, and he's going to say this later in Acts, I would that all men were as I am this day. And he actually acts on that. Like, I believe this, you need to believe this too. So there is just a kind of a drive in him. Yeah. Even if it doesn't have the object it's eventually gonna find, which is mostly Gentiles.
Right.
But the drive is there, no question. Yeah.
What?
Let's go over here. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say that, why Paul with this background
Mm-hmm.
be chosen
Yeah.
other people. But one connection I see is the Lord picks people that are gonna go straight to the empire. Right. So like if you think of Joseph,
Mm-hmm.
picks Joseph,
Yeah.
this kid with the colt or whatever story, but he ends up with Pharaoh.
Yeah.
Egypt is the first kind of great
Right.
empire.
Right.
And then he does the same with Nehemiah and the same with Daniel.
That's true. Okay.
And is like, well, yeah, it's you because and then he does tell Paul, you're going to Rome.
Yes. Yeah, that'll come. Go ahead.
I think it's interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
why is he doing this? Well, he just met Jesus face to face 3 days earlier and was blind for 3 days.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like this happens in a vacuum. I mean, he's met, and Jesus says it's the nego IV in there too. It's like,
Yeah.
I am Jesus.
Yeah.
You're persecuted. It's like,
Right.
and this is not a little thing.
Yeah.
So if the guy who created heaven and earth, he met on the road to Damascus.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
but he's not afraid.
Yes. Yeah. No, he's not. And I think that relates to
Or he's not afraid of the Jews.
yeah, that's part and parcel of what we talked about before lunch. And I think that again, I think we psychologize too many things. That it's just Paul's personality. Paul just didn't know fear, in the sense that I have some kids who will more readily, try to jump off the deck of the porch than other kids. Sure, that's a difference among people, but I think if you have a sense that your life was moving completely in one direction, and then God personally encountered you and moved in a different direction, you're like, well, I guess it's all up for grabs. Like, and you how could you possibly be worried about what someone in the Jerusalem church thinks about you? How could it matter? I don't. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's talk about they're trying to kill him. Kyle brought this up. When many days had passed, the Jews plotted to kill him, but their plot became known to Saul. Notice no one's seemingly calling him Paul right now, but he's also ministering among other Jews. They were watching the gates day and night in order to kill him, but his disciples took him by night and let him down through an opening in the wall, lowering him in a basket. Okay, this is kind of opening in a wall lowered by a basket is kind of Jerusalem under siege type behavior. This is the sort of thing that happens to a prophet who is being hunted. Sneak out of Jerusalem at night or something. Anything on that before we go on? I think it's clear enough. The plots from his own people, that's pretty wild, but he was himself a plotter very recently, like Kyle mentioned. When he had come to Jerusalem, he attempted. Yeah, go ahead,
His
Chris.
disciples.
Yeah.
I mean, they kind of just pop out of nowhere, of course. I mean, so the whole book of Acts is always talking about the gospel and the word of the Lord either being received or rejected.
Yeah.
We don't have any details then about,
His disciples?
right there.
Well,
Right.
yeah. I'm not going to go on the record and sign over my firstborn on this because I'm running purely off memory, but I do not believe that anybody else since John, obviously Jesus has disciples. I don't believe any other mere man since John has had his disciples. And I'm not sure anyone else has disciples. In the case of the guys who are going to precipitate the conflict over circumcision and stuff, they are not even described as disciples, I believe. They are certain men from James. You could describe them. I don't think Luke describes them as disciples. But James, I believe, has kind of a personal force that would perhaps create disciples, whereas no one is envisioning such a group for Peter. But Paul already has them. So this plays into something I do think is important to keep in mind, and it explains some of the, you could tell, I mean, yes, I stand by what I said yesterday. I think the Jerusalem church is wrong in most of its actions from here on out, and I'll make them. But from their perspective, does it not make all kinds of sense to distrust someone who was both killing your people, and then it's obviously such a force that Luke describes him as having disciples, like real fast, right? If your star rises too fast, people don't like you. And it has nothing to do with whether you're good or bad. And that's Paul. Yeah. Yep.
So no, and there's no indication of this. This was a group that was following him and his zealousness, hatred, and all of a sudden they're following him. Or where they get picked up from, but it is, yeah.
I mean, it's possible there are guys that converted at or around the same time, but no. I mean, I don't think so.
Reading in between, but
yeah,
it's just a shocking little.
Yeah, it is a little detail, but it tells you about kind of what kind of power he has. Not some kind of formal power like decision making power or something, but force of personality is the only phrase I can think of right now. Yeah, go ahead.
But do you not think they was referring to the man who was traveling with him on the horse set, who heard Jesus speaking?
It's possible. I just think the phrase "his disciples" is telling. Yeah, it's these guys could have converted with him. They could be people who were already into him. I don't know who they are. Yep, go ahead.
So if there were Christians that were already in Damascus, they might have been ones that fled Jerusalem
From Paul.
from Paul to begin.
Right. Yep.
Interesting.
Damascus does not personally experience Paul's persecution. So he's going to have more trouble in Jerusalem when he gets there. Okay. Let's read a little bit more and then we can discuss this more. When he had come to Jerusalem, he attempted to join the disciples, and they were all afraid of him, for they did not believe that he was a disciple. I think that's entirely fair. I mean, it's understandable. Maybe it's unfair, but it is understandable. Maybe that's a better word. But Barnabas, we last saw him with his field that he sold several chapters back. But Barnabas took him and brought him to the apostles and declared to them how on the road he had seen the Lord who spoke to him, and how at Damascus he had preached boldly, there's that phrase again, in the name of Jesus. So he went in and out among them at Jerusalem, preaching boldly in the name of the Lord. And he spoke and disputed against the Hellenists, but they were seeking to kill him. And when the brothers learned this, they brought him down to Caesarea and sent him off to Tarsus. So they go to a seaport, Caesarea Maritima, and then they pack him off to a place it's not really clear he's been for decades, which is his hometown. Off to Tarsus. So the church throughout all Judea and Galilee and Samaria, nice geographic summary, had peace and was being built up, and walking in the fear of the Lord and in the comfort of the Holy Spirit, it multiplied. Okay, lots of nice little details for us. Let me run through a few, and then whatever you want to discuss. Just terms, I think it's important to know. But the first of the details is what Paul's vision is for. It's really kind of his certificate. If he doesn't have it, and if other people don't know it, no one can really certify that he is who he says he is. So the vision is going to get recounted. This is actually the first time We see it being recounted. It's going to be recounted more times in Acts because it's really his proof that he is squared away, right? If he doesn't have it, right? Who sent you? But they're not even questioning, let's be clear, they're not even questioning, is he really an apostle? That questioning will come at another time and will, in fact, dog him throughout his ministry. That's what he says in 2 Corinthians. They're questioning whether he's a Christian. Okay. Because makes all kinds of sense that he would, in order to ensnare more, pretend to be one. So, okay. So that's their question. I want you to notice then that Paul in himself is the same kind of trouble for the Jerusalem church that the effects of Paul's ministry are going to be in a few chapters for the same Jerusalem church. Okay. But that trouble from his ministry comes forth from a very understandable being troubled about him to start with. Is it real? Should he really be here? Is he who he says he is? And so on. The link, the connective tissue here is Barnabas.
Yeah.
Okay. And you don't want to undersell Barnabas's importance because he's keeping things together. And the being kept together is not, just, well, that's nice. No, it's actually needful. And without Barnabas, I'm not sure that it, in this case, happens. Because Paul doesn't have to speak and can't speak entirely for himself, right? So Barnabas comes in as a kind of character witness with the certifying vision. Okay. Couple other things to notice. When he's now certified, right? He can, quote, go in and out among them, and he's preaching in Jerusalem. Now, it doesn't tell us to whom. Like, does he go into all the different synagogues that got named earlier in Acts in Jerusalem? I don't know. Does he go to one? I don't know. Does he talk to the priests? I don't know. Does he know a lot of people in Jerusalem? Yes, definitely. Does he have access to all those people anymore? Who knows? Okay. So Paul he's almost like a free radical in the body. He's bouncing around everywhere, and he doesn't have the same kind of assured place that the apostles do. Because you notice the sequence was he's introduced to just the general crowd. They're not so sure about him, so then they take him to the apostles. He doesn't really have a spot with either group because he's a preacher, but he's not one of them. And the last time he was in Jerusalem, he was totally untrustworthy. Okay. The people we know he's talking to in verse 29, we've actually seen them before. We personally didn't see them, but if you read all of Acts, every single word, you would have seen them before. They're in 6 verse 1. You don't have to go there. But a complaint by the Hellenists arose against the Hebrews. The Hellenists are the Greek-speaking Jewish women, in the case of 6 verse 1. Hellenists are just going to be Greek-speaking Jews generally, okay? So same ethnic group, different language. Okay. So that's his target right now. It's not clear, like, have these people been talked to before? Somebody was talked to on Pentecost. We know that. But where they are as a group, it's not real clear. Okay. They then send him off for his own good. Let's leave that. If you guys have questions or comments right now on this. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
In Galatians chapter 1, it says Paul went to Arabia, then came back to Damascus for 3 years, and then went to Jerusalem. So does that fit into this?
Yeah, so where does that fit in? Okay. Couple different ideas about Paul, because after verse 30, okay, just in terms of Acts, we don't see Paul for a little while. Okay. Paul will come back up by name as I reckon it in 13. Let me just check on Antioch. He is in Antioch in 1125. Barnabas went to Tarsus to look for Saul. And when he had found him, he brought him to Antioch. So you got a couple different difficulties. Paul in Galatians is much more exact about timing than Luke ever is. And that's just Luke. So Luke, this is easy to compare with Matthew and Mark. If you have like a gospel harmony sometime, or you look the cross references, is that Matthew, Mark, but especially John, who has a reputation as a mystic, but is very clear about when things happen within the year and within the whole scheme of Jesus's ministry. Luke, on the very same occasion, will say, after some time, or while he was going down the road, instead of when. So it's hard for people. Where do those years fit? So this is not a lockdown matter, but here's the best guess, is that those years fit somewhere between 9 and 11. But also, here's the guess, and if you're really, really interested in this, there are multiple whole books, but the easiest one to read, and I think the best one, is called Paul's Early Mission or Early Life, Mission Chronology. The author is a guy named Reasoner. But here's how it would go if you wanted to. Notice how Luke says stuff like this. Verse 19, for some days he was with the disciples at Damascus. Well, that doesn't sound like it's a year. It doesn't even sound like a month, but I don't know. And then immediately he proclaimed Jesus. So we know he started preaching right away. But then do we have any other time references? In 23, we have when many days had passed. Well, how long is many days, Luke? Okay. So the difficulty here is that Paul gives you years in Galatians. And if you want to look at those, let's look at them real quick. He's going to give you a nice sequence in Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, in case your Galatians thumb is rusty. Okay.
Room 17.
Mm-hmm. So he says, I was advancing in Judaism. God was pleased, verse 16, pleased to reveal his son to me. That's the encounter on the road to Damascus. He calls it the revelation, like Pastor Schrader pointed out. I might preach him in order that I might preach him among the Gentiles. Now, Paul knows that by Galatians chapter 1, but I'm not sure he knows that in Acts. I did not immediately consult with anyone. True. Nor did I go up to Jerusalem to those who were apostles before me, but I went away into Arabia and returned again to Damascus. Now, where is Arabia? In Reasoner's book, this is like 50 pages. So you're getting a nice, you don't even have to read it now, so it's nice. Condensed is your best option is into the desert of what we would think of as Syria and Jordan. Your other option is that somehow, for some reason, Paul goes down into the Arabian Peninsula to what was called by the Romans politically Arabia. Instead, I think he's referring to it ethnically, and he's talking about, I went to where the Arabs were. Okay. So he goes out, and then he's back in Damascus. Okay. I went away into Arabia and returned again to Damascus. There's no time on that. Then after 3 years, I went up to Jerusalem to visit Cephas and remained with him 15 days. Okay. Now, if I look in Acts, I'm stuck with when many days had passed. So, I mean, I can stuff 3 years in there if you want me to. That's the only place I think it fits. If you have somewhere better to put it, go for it. But then in Galatians 2:1, when he says, then after 14 years, I went up again to Jerusalem with Barnabas, taking Titus along with me. I'm not even sure that's narrated in Acts. I mean, that's a whole separate kettle of fish. But Luke just doesn't worry about it. So that's what makes it hard. And that's why there are so many different books about Paul's chronology.
Well, the thing is, after his conversion, he did not immediately go out and preach or to the Gentiles.
Right.
There was a
Yes.
period of learning or
That's right.
assimilation or whatever.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Good question. Other things right now here in Damascus or Jerusalem. We have got Paul to Jerusalem and then on to Tarsus. Yes, sir.
The timing we talk about Luke is really important and good. It really helped clarify some things to me because the prologue in Luke, though it's translated weirdly and it doesn't really flow with the Greek. Lots of times it says an exact timeline or something. It's not what the Greek actually says.
Mm-hmm.
But he's ordering things theologically, not specifically. Because I mean, John's actually the only one.
John is the chronology guy.
Which is weird, but still, that's the way it is.
I think we think of John as mystical, but your actual kind of hippie poet personality would probably be Luke. Like how well I felt very Lucan earlier. What did you say? I said something. And then I was like, yeah, it's chill. That's Luke. Like, it's chill. You know, how long did it take? It was a while.
A few days.
How long are we going to be? When are we going to come back from lunch? 1, 15, 20, I don't know. So we're feeling Lucan. When you feel happy about life, that's when you're more Luke. Yeah, go ahead.
That's like my son. Whenever he leaves, he says, I'll see you in a bit.
Yeah, that's good.
It could be 3 weeks later. You know.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
Luke's a surfer?
Maybe. Definitely chilled out. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, he's a physician and an artist, right? That's the
Traditionally, he's an artist. He's a patron of iconography. The physician thing is actually named by Paul, so that's a little that's
solid.
yeah. Those don't have to be exclusive.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Have you by chance seen the series The Chosen?
No.
So in The Chosen, as they're doing some of that,
Yeah.
Jesus keeps telling them soon. This will happen soon.
Yeah.
And this sort of similar to what you talk about here, they end up asking it, well, what does soon mean?
Yeah.
So soon could mean the next hour, or soon could mean
Yeah. In a bit. Yeah. That's right. Let me just talk a little bit about Tarsus and what Paul is doing while he's in Tarsus and how much time passes between 9 verse 30 and 11 verse 25 is not entirely clear. Because Luke is mostly busy narrating what happens with Peter and Cornelius and the days connected to those things. Tarsus is a fairly new city. It is very wealthy. Parallel cities that I've thought of to maybe stimulate your thinking would be like Tampa or, I don't know, Scottsdale, Arizona, or somewhere that a century ago was there but barely existed, and now there's a ton of people. And Miami might be similar. Yeah. But you wouldn't say, oh, I'm going to Tarsus to for its sheer natural beauty or its wealth of cultural opportunities. It's just kind of a nice, wealthy place to live. Not a lot of history, maybe not like amazing mountains or something, but a really nice place to live. And that's where he grows up. This is a little bit of background. This also comes from Reiner Reasoner, is how did Paul become a Roman citizen? So I want to talk about this just for a second as far as background goes, because Jews are not, as a rule, citizens. In 212, so well after Paul lives and dies, the Emperor Caracalla will make everybody who lives inside the empire a citizen. And that's for his own administrative reasons at that time. In Paul's time, citizenship is only given by birth to men of the Roman nation, right? So they're always thinking ethnically, and don't even hear racially. Think like my people group, like my ethnicity, and they're not mixed. So men of the Roman nation, and then as a gift to certain others. Well, who received this gift? If Paul is born a Roman citizen, how are his family members Roman citizens already in either the last couple years of the first century BC or the first couple years of the first century AD? And Reiner Reasoner's guess, I think it's as good as any, is that the opportunity a Jew who was not fabulously wealthy would have had to become a citizen was when many Jews helped the Romans take over Judea. That would be in the 60s BC. So you would be looking, if you think about this time-wise, at some kind of service, probably as a soldier in Herod's army, because Herod is the side the Romans pick, and that's the victorious side, and that was effectively a civil war, that Paul's grandfather would have had to be a soldier in Herod's army, basically in order to receive this, unless by some means the family were fabulously wealthy. Possible, just honestly less likely. Okay. Also because Paul knows handicraft, and that's just not something a wealthy boy would have been trained to do. So it's a guess. I think it's an interesting thing to think about. Paul grows up away from, he is born away from that and then is educated in it. So he's somewhat like, if you think about a missionary kid, maybe is growing up. And I knew a guy, he was my organist. He grew up in Papua New Guinea. Hard for some Americans to even locate on a map, but significant Lutheran mission in Papua New Guinea. And he, having grown up in like a tropical country, he is sent to school in Minnesota, among other Lutherans. So now he's around a bunch of people who look like him, but he's never lived there in his whole life. So it's familiar but unfamiliar. And that's kind of Paul. Yeah, go ahead.
So for the Roman citizenship,
Yeah.
Was that a piece of paper you kept on with you? Because
Oh, that's a good question.
it was like he can prove it, but it doesn't tell us how he proves it. I imagine it's, but it's enough proof to stop him from being executed.
Yeah. One thing you can actually rely on with Romans, and it may be why Latin American countries are so good at being bureaucratic, is that there's a piece of paper for most things.
Like this, man, that's a guard piece of paper.
Yeah, that it is a piece of paper.
What do they use medallions?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, medallions are struck sometimes as military decorations, but not for citizenship.
They keep records.
They keep records.
Would be in Roman control.
Correct. Yeah, this can be looked up if challenged. Because the reason that we have martyrdom accounts is because the Romans sat there and wrote down, and then she said that she wasn't willing to sacrifice to Caesar. And then I said, why are you doing this? You have a child to take care of. And she said, I would rather, the reason it's not because the Christians were sitting there writing it, it's because the Romans wrote it down. Like, we don't have similar martyrdom accounts for Christians who died at the hands of communists in the 20th century. Like, but the Romans were like, this is a trial. We have a court reporter. We're going to write it down. Like, they are good at bureaucracy. Yeah. So, yeah, good question. Okay. Any other questions right now? Let's do a little bit more, and then we'll take a little break at about 2:45, if that works for you. Okay. And I am going to skip now past Dorcas and that crew. I want to skip to Peter's vision in chapter 10. Okay. So we're looking at 10, 9 to 16. And the significance of food here has to do with the faith's ability to spread. You might remember that when Jesus sends out the 12, he commands them to eat whatever is set before you. Excuse me, I guess that's polite, that's helpful. I didn't really drink coffee until I was ordained, and then that's all that anyone serves you, because I, never served a parish in, I don't know, England or something. So I drink coffee because that's what people put in front of you. But it's not just a matter of politeness, and we'll see that in this vision. So this is 10, 9 to 16. The next day, as they were on their journey and approaching the city, Peter went up on the housetop about the 6th hour to pray. This is noon. And he became hungry and wanted something to eat, but while they were preparing it, he fell into a trance and saw the heavens opened and something like a great sheet descending, being let down by its four corners upon the earth. And it were all kinds of animals and reptiles and birds of the air. And that would probably make you squeamish, right? And there came a voice to him, "Rise, Peter, kill and eat." But Peter said, "By no means, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean," right? So defiling in differing degrees there, common or unclean. And the voice came to him again a second time, "What God has made clean, do not call common." This happened 3 times, and the thing was taken up at once to heaven. So the use of 3 is always significant. It's going to kind of round things off. We think of round numbers as being multiples of 10. They kind of think of a round number as being a multiple of either 3 or 7. Like, this is good. This is finished off. But the vision is a vision that's going to enable geographic movement that so far hasn't really particularly happened. What we've already seen is that from the very place that Paul takes his boat off to back home to Tarsus, at Caesarea Maritima, is this man Cornelius, and he's told that things are going to get moving here. He's a God-fearer. Peter is being prepared for that. Peter is really the obstacle. Cornelius is not the obstacle. Peter is the one who has to change before the encounter so that the encounter is even possible. The nature of the change has to do with food. Okay. I think, honestly, this is something like names. No, we don't have the exact same religious significance, but yes, some of the same power is built into the thing that we can understand what they're talking about. Is that sharing a meal with somebody is pretty important, especially being able to share the same food. So you don't even go to a restaurant and order separate things and maybe even pay separately. You are there with them and they are serving you and you are eating. Okay. It also is going to involve, therefore, physical contact of some kind. And that is not something that Jews are doing with Gentiles. They're just not physically contacting them. You can have this experience if you go to certain neighborhoods of Brooklyn. Okay. You will have people physically avoid you, like obviously, like swerve around you on the sidewalk in order not to touch you, since you're obviously not a Jew. Okay. So the desire to avoid physical contact obviously precludes eating food, and not eating with somebody precludes everything else. You don't have to live with them. You really don't even have to have anything to do with them. So when we had the geographic thing spelled out back in chapter 1, part of what's not explained there is what are the conditions of end of the earth? Like, are there any border requirements? Like, in order to cross the border from Pennsylvania into Maryland, into West Virginia, into Virginia to get here, I didn't have to do anything. But if I want to go to another country, I have to do something. Visa on arrival, passport at the boat, whatever the requirements are. Between a Jew and a non-Jew, it's like it's the border of a foreign country everywhere all of the time. So if I need somebody to go across that border, the thing that I need him to be able to do is to be able to share basic life things with that non-Jew. That's why the vision is about food. We don't think about this because we are so accustomed to Christianity that we don't even think of food as really necessarily, with the exception of the Lord's Supper, which is, on a nutritional level, kind of barely food, right? It's like, doesn't taste very good and it's over quickly, right? It's not really a meal, right? We don't think of food as religious. Pretty much every religion has food laws. Okay. I'm not saying that later on in tradition, Christianity wouldn't, in many cases, develop food laws, but in the original setup, it doesn't have them. There's no rules about days of the week, foods you can eat, foods you can't eat, what season you're allowed to use olive oil, what season you can't have any olive oil or wine in your diet. All these, that comes later. Okay. Because right now it's set up so when you go there, you just eat the food in Thailand, in Canada, in wherever you are. You just eat it because that's what people do there. Okay. It goes along, the food stuff actually goes along with something that has already been overcome, which is language. So now I can talk to you and I can eat with you. So now we can kind of share a life. All right. Talk about the vision in a second. Anything on food generally you'd like to discuss? Holy food, anything? Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, in a sense, we do have holy food, orthorexia, in terms of right eating, vegetarianism, veganism, etc. My oldest son was vegan.
Mm-hmm.
That caused consternation at the table.
Yeah.
Because, well, finally he decided to start eating after 10, 15 years. At least just a month.
Wow.
But yeah, it's pain.
And it does have a component. I mean, if I say this, some of you will maybe know who this is, but I'm not going to name him because I'm going to be critical. Is that I have encountered this mostly in college, because where I went to college, it was all vegans. But now I encounter it among other friends as carnivores, but it's the same thing. Like they have to tell you why, and then you have to kind of put up with it if you are with them. Especially if you're at their house, you have to eat that. And okay, fine, eat whatever is set before you, but like it's the religious component of people's diet and exercise preferences, and it's like I'm not good at being evangelized. Like, just leave me alone. I'm leaving you alone. I'm not telling you why I like Bojangles. That's a gross thing, but I do, right? I'm not telling you anything of, like, just leave me alone. But they can't. So there is kind of a religious fervor that does get attached to diets today. That's true. Yeah, no question. Yeah, go ahead.
But there was a time in the United States with the temperance union where it was said by some of the advocates that one drop of alcohol on your lips, you will burn forever. So the dietary.
Yeah, we have. Right. Yeah, sure. Yeah, we've had things.
That's some strong alcohol.
We've had some things like that. Okay, you're right. Go ahead. Yeah.
So it's a weird thing, but
Okay.
thinking about something that's hopefully not common, even though
Yeah.
some of those vegans may actually think about it.
Yeah.
Is cannibalism, and how that kind of gets twisted because that's like everyone goes further, like even in Asia, like, oh, what are they doing? Well, they're doing cannibalism here, and that's like their secret meal. We go into America,
That's
they're
true.
doing cannibalism.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And so, and even probably not in Rome since they probably outlawed it, but that was probably happening other places nearby. And so, like this, I guess, just saying like this corruption of it, and like, what does that even play into? Because obviously, in this, it's talking about the beasts of the earth. It's not mentioning humans, yet that twisting of food and communion with people while you're eating.
So yeah, so
I guess too they would then declare the Christians were cannibalism, you know, then
they did. Yeah,
hey,
they did. Yeah. So cannibalism is somewhat common in what you would call traditional religions, or strictly speaking, pagan religions, generally as a source of obtaining power from whomever you're eating. So in certain amounts, maybe not as like a nutritional, but in certain amounts as a ritual meal, somewhat common.
Yeah.
Somewhat common. The Christians are accused of being cannibals because pagans do understand that they're eating the body and blood of the Lord. They hear that, and so they're accused. Cannibalism and incest, because they greet one another with a holy kiss and say brother and sister, are the two most common legal accusations about Christianity during its period of illegality. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Go ahead.
It's interesting here with the food that Peter, and then Paul later, just in Corinthians. I'm interested in three things.
Okay.
One is the Old Testament sacrifices, where it's essentially a barbecue for part of it.
Mhm.
Some of it's all burnt offering, but part of it is a feast
Mhm.
for the
Yeah.
people. And then, of course, this kind of translates, especially into the Lord's Supper. And it seems like in Acts and in Corinthians, I mean, Paul talks about this. This is not the Lord's Supper. And it seems like the potluck and the Lord's Supper are kind of conflated. And, maybe the ceremony is not distinct.
Mhm.
Right? In the New Testament, do you have any?
Okay. So I'll answer those together. What's your third thing? What's your third? You said you had three things.
Oh, it's the Old Testament Lord's Supper, and then this kind of eating there's a I mean, potluck is something, at least in my church, the potluck is something separate.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we're just going to have fun.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's essential in the New Testament church.
Yeah.
And it's part of the fellowship, of which part of it is the Lord's Supper.
Yeah. Okay. So in the case of the Lord's Supper, so kind of in the middle of those things, they don't have a special day. I think it's just really unlikely that they got to meet on Sunday morning. I think it's unlikely because that's not set aside by anyone else for anything. So you'd all have to opt out of work at least once a week, all of you. So Sunday evening, maybe. It's a mealtime, and they are eating food, and they are bringing food in differing amounts because the wealthy are bringing more, and they're getting drunk on the wine that they brought. And that's in connection with the Lord's Supper. And the reason it's not the Lord's Supper is because I'm not even sure they're getting to the part that involves the words of institution. They're drunk already, or some of them are famished and have gone elsewhere to look for food or something. I mean, but they are setting the New Testament Lord's Supper within a meal. And that's not, like you said, at all alien to sin offerings in the Old Testament, because there is feasting in connection with the sin offering. Yeah. Yeah. The meal goes together. This is also why the place of confrontation in the letter to the Galatians is at a meal, right? That Peter loses his courage of conviction about being with Gentiles at a meal and has to, moves away from them to only eat with other Jewish Christians. And that's why that conflict happens there, because it's the place where they're supposed to be together, but now a food law that is not germane anymore has been reapplied. Okay. Yeah, you can't. I mean, you can't take the Lord's Supper with people you refuse to be next to, for whatever set of reasons, food laws, whatever. You just can't be next to them. Okay, well then you're not going to be in the same church. That's the way it goes. Yeah. Okay. Other things on food before we take a little break here. I'm gonna get some coffee. I think y'all made it. Yeah, Ron, go ahead.
That's my personal
Yeah.
view right now is we seem to go the other way on things. When we have a conference, you have to find out does anyone have any food requirements that we have to now meet, as opposed to just put the food out and they're supposed to eat it.
Yeah.
So I was annoyed with that. I'm going to put carnivores only, and that's the end.
I don't care if the carnivores just take the meat. I just don't want to have to talk about it. I find it boring, and I want to talk about other things.
I still want to plan separate menus.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
For the religious aspect of a meal that you want to take a picture of, put on Facebook.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, Insta. Yeah, that's right. All right, let's take a 15-minute break. We'll come back at 3.